Okay, great, thank you. It's 6 o'clock, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Goose Rock Beach Advisory Committee on March 17th, being held in hybrid format. We have two of our members, Chaz Cadwell and Holly Mudd, who are participating on Zoom, and then the rest of us are here at the North Street Fire Station. So the first agenda item is approval of the minutes. I think they were circulated, and I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
A second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone that has any items they would like to bring to our attention that's either sitting here or on Zoom?
Yes. Anybody on Zoom land?
No hands raised.
All right.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll move on to committee reports. I think the first one is public safety, which is Chaz, so hopefully you can get him to participate virtually.
I can hear you fine, Pam, so if you can hear me, I'll proceed.
Sounds
Yep.
good.
So I started the new year by checking in with Police Chief Chris Simeone and the Fire Chief Jay Everett, and have a few items to share as we look ahead. First, good news, I guess, we haven't had any major storms to test the town's systems the way last winter did, or at least none yet. There also haven't been any more road parties like there were last September at Mills Road and Dyke Road, or at least not in Kennebunkport. And the increased signage at that intersection, which was put in order to reduce the chances of accidents of the high rate of speed on Mills Road, haven't really been tested and won't be until summertime. The annual report of the town had some interesting safety data that I want to share a little bit of, even though very little of it is broken out just for Goose Rocks. The first is that parking tickets and traffic stops in town were down considerably in 2024. At Goose Rocks, where we do have some data, tickets dropped from 915 in 2023 to 700 in 2024. It's not clear quite why that is. One is staffing shortages. If you chart the traffic stops with the level of patrol officers, it tracks pretty closely year on year. But also, Chief Simeone thought there might have been some better compliance is contributing to that as well. Arrests were down in 2024, partly because Maine decriminalized a whole lot of things in the recent years, including the marijuana laws. And another safety issue, the number of burglaries is down to 29 for the whole town in 2024. I'll note that there were 55 in 2019, so we must all be behaving better. Looking ahead to this summer, the speed bump on New Bedford Road will be in return before Memorial Day, as will the speed signage on Dyke Road and or Kings Highway. This doesn't address the speeding issues that we heard about, concerns about last year on the back roads, and I don't have anything more to share on that. But there's also going to be some improved signage around the handicapped and fire access lanes, which apparently hasn't been crystal clear in the past. With respect to parking, the town has increased both the fees and the fines. I'm not sure which ones will drive people to risk fines more or less, but the parking fees for Goose Rock residents seasonal pass at the beach, $10, I think, instead of $5. Non-resident daily passes go up to $40, non-resident weekly passes to $200, and non-resident seasonal packages to $325. But there are also increases in fines for parking violations that are effective May 1st. One is parking without a beach permit is no longer $65, being $80 fine. A handicapped violation, parking violation at the state's urging will become $265 instead of $210. Fire lane violation goes from $35 to $265, marking a measure of how serious the town takes those violations. And all other parking violations increase from $35 to $50. All of those effective May 1st. The fire department had an increased number of calls in 2024. due to a couple of things. One is that the season is getting longer. The summer season, busy season, seems to stay busy right through Prelude these days. So there's just more people around, but also there are more fire alarm systems and more buildings as the number of homes creeps up. So the burglar alarms and that sort of thing going off also are an increase. I asked Jay Everett if there are things that those of us who are at the beach can be doing to help first responders. And he had two suggestions, which we've heard before, but I will read his note directly. First of all, make sure that the addresses on the homes can be easily seen coming from both directions on the street. Short-term rentals should make sure the address is given to the renters and even inside the home in case they have to call 911. And then again, pressing the waterfront owners, how important it is to put their address numbers on the beach side of the house so that in case of a medical emergency, people can call first responders to the right part of the beach as opposed to simply Goose Rocks Beach at the right end or something like that. Yeah. And I know that, I think we even did a mailing a couple of years ago on this, but I think there are only 2 of us who put signs on our houses. So this is still something that the fire chief thinks is a limit to his ability to respond quickly. Finally, I know there are some other parking issues on our agenda, but I'm going to leave those for that subgroup. And I will invite, I know we don't have a jillion people here, but I'll invite people who are interested in any of these issues to contact me or even join the committee. You can be in touch with me by emailing me at cadwellchassbac@gmail.com, or I guess through the committee and through the town as well. That's all I have, Pam, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
No, thank you, Chaz. Are there any questions on Chaz's report?
Thanks, Chaz.
Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute, I still have never understood, I'm gonna take my soapbox here, why the town would not require, it's such a simple thing, that beachfront owners put the numbers on their beach. It's not like a major expense or anything else, and it's a matter of public safety. John, do you have any thoughts or input on that?
To require it, you really need to be sure. I mean, it's a shade of gray. I can see why the town would not want to require it. We strongly suggest it. There are things that are important to require. You've got to have them on the front of the house, certainly. But it's just, in my opinion, fallen shy of where the town wants to make a mandate to the population that they have to put the numbers. So, you know, it's a matter of where you draw the line, and I think it's an appropriate place to draw the line.
I'd be happy to send a mailing out to all the beachfront owners requesting it. I think you guys might have done that last year, but it certainly can't hurt.
I would think so.
I
The more we can
think,
say it, the better.
and maybe we get some concurrence from the fire chief and the police chief, because they seem to be on the same page. So I think that'd be great, Holly, if you can do that.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Okay, natural resources, I know you have some, Bill, and I think Carol has some, so you.
Okay, Carol, you want to start with the final piping plover report, or?
Okay.
This is from Maine Audubon, and this year, the productivity is back, which means we had fewer pairs, but they were more productive, which is a good thing. And I'm really proud of us, because we weren't first. Wells is first, but Wells has a huge volunteer program. They have 50 volunteers, and it's a huge program. We came in second. Wells had 17 pair and 37 fledglings. We had 12 pairs and 28 fledglings, and came in second in the state of Maine. So I think we did really, really well. And I know this is St. Patrick's Day, and be prepared, the plovers are on their way. They will be either stopping by or passing through here very shortly. And for me, it's great to hear the birds singing. I mean, from our cold winter, it's so nice to hear them singing. And for those of you that like the birds, this is a great migration time. And you'll probably see a lot coming on the beach going through it. So that's all I have to say.
That's great, thanks a lot, Carol.
Sure.
Okay, I have 3 things on my list. I think we're going to address one of them later, but I'm sure most people realize, or maybe people don't, but our water testing and our beach profiling are done in conjunction with some federal funding, some NOAA funding, and some EPA funding through the DEP. So I fear that we might possibly lose some of that funding. We don't know, but obviously NOAA's budget has been cut big time already. So I just want people to know that if we want to continue with these programs, we may have to do a little more self-funding on some of them if we do. I think they're important. I think the data that is obtained from the, especially the water testing and the beach profiling too over time are important to keep track of the health of our beach. So personally, I would be all in favor of the town continuing to fund them, even if it has to be at a higher level. I'm going to talk a little bit about dune restoration, or the dune restoration project, because I walk the beach not daily, but a lot more this winter than I ever have before. And we were kind of lucky so far, as I said, so far so good. The storms that did hit us this year hit at either low tide or at a low, astronomically low high tide. So the water never reached the dunes at any time. I would like to say I was down at the New Biddeford end right away today, and that would be impossible to, it has drifted in the way they angled the path. The side towards the tides has drifted in completely, and it's only about 5 feet wide now, so there would be no emergency vehicle access at that point at this stage. I mean, the dune's just building on its own. It's the wind moving the sand.
Which entrance is it?
New Biddeford Road.
So the Jeffries Way?
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Jeffries Way,
Yeah.
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 So that's, I don't know if the fire department wants to just check it out or whatever, but.
Appreciate that, I'll let them know, yeah.
And the other thing is, at the end of this month, on 4:30 to 4:02, we have very, very high tides, over 11-foot tides for about 4 days in a row. So that's going to be something to watch for. Hopefully we won't have a storm in that time frame. All the highest tides over this spring are actually on, and this winter have been on new moons, not full moons. So, and I did want to talk about the beach cleanup, which has always been Paul Hogan's baby, but I'm going to be taking over at least the planning of it. So Earth Day this year is on April 22nd, and tide-wise, the best weekend near that, it would be on Saturday, 4/19. So that's the day I'd like to set, at least initially, for that beach
Bill?
cleanup.
That's Easter weekend,
That's Easter weekend.
yeah.
Well, if we do it the next weekend, high tide's at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's a high tide, so,
Okay, just mentioning the facts, so.
yeah. Well, we could push it to May. I wouldn't want to do it any earlier than April 19th.
Yeah, oh, no, I
So,
agree.
Could
But-
you do it that first week in May? I mean, does the tide work then? I'm trying to.
The tide would work the first weekend in May.
Be low,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like a better,
That might be better. I think
Okay.
Easter, you people are gonna.
So I don't have my calendar. I think it was,
say,
I want to say 5/3,
I
but
think
that
that'll
might.
be the 30th, I think that, shouldn't it?
is a Saturday, I know.
What is it?
Yeah.
May
third, yeah,
May
May 3rd, that's what I thought, yeah, May 3rd.
That's the Saturday or the Friday? Saturday?
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so we need to get a dumpster or whatever from.
yeah, we need to I gotta talk to I don't know if the town, I think Paul just ordered it and then the town paid for it, but.
Yeah,
they-
the town procured it.
Good,
in the past, so
good.
you just talked
I've
to
got
them.
100 new steaks on order because we threw away 100 steaks.
Okay.
So
Good.
there were, and we got plenty of the twine.
And
that-
you have enough
Right color,
signs
we got the
to-
right color.
Lots of
sign
signs,
and the
yeah.
Signs, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So May 3rd.
And that's all I have. If anyone else wants to.
That's good.
Okay, can you come up and identify yourself for people in the audience?
Doug McCray from Broadway.
Yeah, no, stay at the microphone so people can hear you.
I'm wondering, what does the town pay for the beach survey, which is done by volunteers?
Yeah, there's a fee that NOAA charges to collect, monitor. We help pay for the operation itself and the monitoring.
Oh, so every town is contributing?
Every
to
town
the,
that wishes to participate, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if you're involved in the Healthy Beach program, you're paying, that's the water.
That's the water,
Yeah.
but
The beach
I
price
believe
only.
it's the same with the
Same,
the
yeah.
profiling as well. But my understanding is that will continue, but it's, obviously,
other questions on natural resources here or out on the virtual community?
None on Zoom.
Okay, perfect. The next report is communications. Holly, and you can give us an update on what's going on in your world?
Sorry, trying to get off of mute here. So really, I just wanted to share, for those of you who are participating either via Zoom or in the room, I just wanted to share our email address. We do look at this email address quite open the box, daily, by, every so often. So if you have any questions or need anything, it's grbadvisory@gmail.com.
Great, thanks, Holly.
Sure.
Okay, parking subcommittee. Kate?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so first of all, we now have a parking subcommittee. It consists of myself, Pam, Pat Souza, who I don't think is here tonight, and Wendy Bosley, who I know is not here tonight since she's on the other side of the country, maybe. We managed to pull together a meeting by Zoom last month and hash through, at this point, we're pretty much just identifying issues. We haven't come up with solutions. We need to first identify the issues and rank them in some order of priority. So I'll kind of run through that, and if we have any comments or input, I'd appreciate it. First and foremost issue, we all agreed, is the threshold issue is the question of where the beach use agreement and beach use ordinance stands on the issue of parking and vis-a-vis other ordinances in the town. And that's a legal issue that I think needs to be determined. The town, I think, has, according to Paul Hogan, who was one of the people directly involved in the litigation and the negotiation that resulted in the beach use agreement, the issue of overusage, more dense population of the beach was very important and was in part solved, they believe, by limiting the parking that was available to people who, weren't within walking distance, so to speak. I think that's still an issue and still something that probably needs to be addressed by the town. I would agree with Paul from my reading as a lawyer, reading the beach use agreement and ordinance, that I believe that controls that any street parking in the town, in the Goose Rocks Beach area, since arguably any street parking could very easily be for beach access. So that's one issue that we think needs to be looked at carefully, and I'm not quite sure what the process would be for doing that, whether we make a motion and bring it to the town or just have a discussion with the town officials about that.
Just for consideration, though, any street parking could also arguably be for the residents that the parking is in front of. So how does one distinguish between the two?
Well, that's exactly the issue. If you can't, then you have, I would say, the beach use ordinance, potentially any parking on a street, a side street, is potentially for beach use.
I think that's kind of okay, fair enough.
Well, then it gets us into enforcement issues. I'm trying to figure out a way that, otherwise, it's wide open. Anybody can park anywhere, and we would have to assume, perhaps, that they are visiting Aunt Nellie. I mean, I think in the past, and maybe Carol also can speak to this, that the issue was that people expected guests to park they parked them either in their driveways or even on their lawns.
Why change?
Or what?
Why change?
But we are seeing more instances, apparently, from last summer, anecdotally, of people parking on the streets, some very clearly getting out of their car with beach chairs and heading off and showing up a couple of hours later. And unfortunately, it's an issue that has come forth because we're seeing much greater use of the beach. For one thing, when this ordinance was enacted, we weren't selling daily parking passes. So we've added that, and we have more people, way more people, probably every day, buying a parking pass than we have parking spaces for, legitimate parking spaces. So this is an issue, folks. So, again, we
I
think
think
this,
the reason you have more is that people, the spot's used more than once. People don't stay the entire day. So let me be clear on that. We can't just go by the numbers and say if there's more than 173 sold, then clearly people were not parking in the spots. Okay, just to be sure. Yep.
don't doubt that we have no way at this point of knowing that one way or the other. Putting aside whether this is the legal issue here, even if it is legal, only legal to use those 173, there are a couple of issues, further issues about those 173 that we all pretty much agreed should be on the table. One of them, and I think just as a matter of fairness, I think, John, you even raised this before, is there some way of reserving some number of those 173 spaces solely for town residents / taxpayers, those who would have the resident sticker? Because it happens that most people in town pretty much don't use the beach in the summer because they know that they have very little chance of trying to get a legitimate parking space. So I think that is something, it would be a good idea to consider whether we do something like, say, the West End spaces are strictly for residents. It's only 4 of them, but it's at least something there, or some other larger even number. The other issue is this has been, those 173 spaces have been pretty much where they are, which is pretty much all at the East End, for quite a while. And we're wondering whether it's time now to just do another look at where are they actually located. Are there other ways? Should some be moved somewhere else? I don't have the answer to that yet, but certainly, maybe it's time to take a look and say, what are these the primary, the best locations, or are there other options where maybe you move some somewhere else? I don't know. One thing somebody's put forth is, for example, there's only the 4 spaces on the West End. Now, there's an issue certainly on the West End of access to the beach. There aren't the public entrances. But, we have on New Biddeford Road, we have a number of spaces that are parking basically on the pavement and partially on somebody's, lawn or whatever. So,
Easement,
Just-
they have an easement? Okay,
Town
well,
has an easement,
I was
right?
just going to ask you about that, Kate, because I know now cars park all along Dyke Road and they don't get ticketed. So are those
well, wait a minute,
included in the
hold-
173?
Can you hold on a
spots?
sec? Could you identify yourself just so people we have, the record here?
Of course, I'm so sorry. This is Holly Mudd.
Hi,
So my
Holly.
question was, you talked about New Biddeford, same thing, Dyke Road. Cars are parked now along Dyke Road. Some are spots, some are not, but they're pulled off the road, and those seem to be legal. Those are in addition to the 173, is that correct?
No.
Yes,
No,
wait a
no,
minute.
no,
Well,
that's part of the
That's
173.
part of
but there are also people parking on Dyke Road, on the upper end of it, where there is a slightly wider space off of, it's not on somebody's, obviously, a house property or something. I have seen people parking up at the upper end of Dyke Road that are not part of the
Well, that's
173,
not part of
They
as
want,
well as on
they
Goose
want to walk
Road.
3/4 of a mile to the beach, that's,
it. No, but that's,
That's okay, I have to walk a half a mile. So, any event, I think that it is maybe time, one suggestion is it time to take a look at exactly where the 173 spaces are, and is there any, should there be any rearrangement of that at all? That's one issue. I don't have answers yet. And the other thing is, with regard to the 173 spaces, whether they're where they currently are or moved around or whatever, but we all pretty much felt that they could be better marked. The ones along Kings Highway are reasonably well marked, but going up both Dyke Road, I think, and New Biddeford Road, not so much. So it would help people to know exactly where there are legitimate spaces. That's, again, just another thing possibly to look at going forward if we're dealing just with the 173. Then we've also looked at the town ordinances, and thanks to Pat Sousa, who did a lot of looking at what does it actually say, and it's confusing. I think I went back and looked at it a couple of times too, and We have, you know, if you look at the one part of the parking ordinance that says it's okay to, it seems to be say it's okay to park anywhere that is not marked no parking, which would tend to say, you could read that to say at Goose Rocks Beach, because there are only certain streets that have any reference or mention in the Goose Rocks Beach, the town's parking ordinances. Does that mean that says anywhere else in Goose Rocks Beach, therefore you can park anywhere? We don't know, but it raises questions there. And let's see. And the other thing, when you look at the ordinances, it's difficult to determine sometimes because a lot of references are not to intersections with other streets, it's to CMP pole such and such. So obviously somebody from away isn't gonna, I don't even know where CMP pole such and such is. So it then goes to how do we, if that's what we're gonna go with, how do we convey to people exactly where they can park or cannot park? And again, that goes to the signage issue. Pam has done many walks around and taken many photos of the signage, particularly at the east end, and there is a lot of confusion and inconsistency. The safety, we think there's a safety issue here, particularly, obviously, what we're mostly concerned about is parking in the summertime, in the high season. We have many, many more pedestrians, cars, bicyclists, particularly children on bikes, using our streets around here, which again, I think lobbies in favor of, or to me militates in favor of being very cautious about allowing people to park on the streets. I know that I have, come down a couple of times when I'm coming down from the quote private road area above the community house and coming down Community House Road at a very slow pace. I move around and drive around here at a very slow pace, but all of a sudden a child on a bicycle who is coming up Community House Road pops out from behind the car that's parked on the pavement. You can't see them. We think it's a safety issue that needs to be looked at. And of course, some of these roads, we all know these roads are not very wide. And if we allow parking on the pavements on some of them, have we met whatever degree of space that emergency vehicles would need? It's another, again, we're just raising issues at this point that we'd like to see the town or work with the town in looking at. As I mentioned, signage, very confusing. Again, let's look at all of it. And then last and not least is enforcement. How are these, whatever parking regulations we are determined to be the ones that need to be in place, how are they going to be enforced? I know at one point at, I think it was one of the February, I think it was the select board meeting where you were discussing parking fees and fines and the sticker prices and stuff like that. One of the select members raised the issue about this parking on the back roads, and another one thought that, of course, that the CSOs would be able to enforce that. And I think that the CSOs, they've got as much as they can to handle on the 3-mile long beach and the 1.5 mile, areas where they are checking stickers and ticketing and stuff like that. So that does raise the issue of what's going to happen no matter what these parking regulations are finally decided to be with regard to parking on the back roads. So that's all I have at this point. As I said, at this point, we've only had one meeting. It's been productive mostly from the standpoint of raising the issues. I'd love to get feedback from other members of the committee or anybody out there, and we can continue. I mean, I don't think this is an issue that's going to get solved by this summer, but it's one where we need to look at it, perhaps take a closer look this summer on what exactly is happening out there. We've heard reports from a number of people of, as I said, of people parking on the back roads, presumably, apparently to go to the beach or potentially to be going to the beach. So,
are you looking into the actual, how people use the 173 places now?
in terms of whether they're, yes, we'd like to, but that's not the primary point at this point. But
Okay.
we realize that with that limited number, there are still issues of people, quite frankly, beachfront owners using it as adjunct parking for their homes.
Or is parking there overnight.
Or parking there overnight, yeah.
Not those, but other people.
Yeah. I think we looked into the overnight, actually had the police department actually did patrol last summer for a couple of weeks. Was it last summer? For a
Yes,
couple
last
of
summer.
weeks.
Yes.
And you gave us, I think you were, John, or you gave us a report, that there was some of it going on, particularly on the east end, where, obviously where the 173 are. We haven't taken it beyond that. Have you, any thought on that, John?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm just asking if that was in your consideration, that was all.
Madam Chair, we have 3 hands raised on Zoom.
Okay.
Mike Nash, you can speak when you unmute yourself.
Thanks. I'm actually a beach owner down, I guess, on what is the west end. I just wanted to share that we use the spaces in front of our house for our cars, which have permits, so that our guests can park in our driveway. So I guess my question is, what is the official rule on, you mentioned the relationship between the new beach ordinance and the parking spaces. I guess the details of that, I just wasn't aware of them because I think I purchased my house after that all happened. So can you clarify how those things relate? Because it was new information to me. Thanks.
That is an interesting question. It does say that the parking spaces are primarily for beach access. And there is, I believe, I don't have my computer with me with the ordinances. I think there is, in fact, an ordinance that prohibits you from sleeping in that car overnight. But I don't think there's anything that flat out says you cannot park in it.
Yeah, it's why you can't camp overnight.
You can't camp overnight.
Nor have we ever. But I guess the fact that we even have the permit suggests that we're supposed to be allowed to use those spaces. I can't say that whenever we're in the space, it means we're at the beach. It means we're in our house. So if we have the permit, we'd think we'd be parking in the space. And again, I use the word camp out. We put our cars in the space so that our guests can park in our driveway, whether or not they have a permit. Mostly, like my in-laws come down the road, they're 80s. The last thing they want to be doing is looking for a parking space, so they park in our driveway.
Right. No, I understand that, and it's not, you're not alone on that as a beachfront owner, because other people do, and some people, I know that happens. We haven't resolved that issue, to be honest.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
We have one from the audience, please, first. Just go ahead. Would your name and address, please?
Yeah, my
Use
name
the
is,
mic now. Hold the mic up, yeah.
my name is Brendan Donovan. I live at 876 Kings Highway. And I don't want to confuse the issue, but somebody should explore exactly who owns the roads at Goose Rocks Beach. If you go back to the deed, back in the early 20s, Odessa Gray and Orlando Dow deeded the roads to on Goose Rocks Beach, which they owned at the time. They deeded them, they gave them to the town, they allowed the town to use the roads, not ownership, but use the roads, subject to maintaining the roads and safety. The roads themselves are owned by people like myself who own property. And I discovered this when I was doing research when they were talking about renumbering the beachfront properties. And I came up with a whole bunch of documents which I proceeded to give to Laurie Smith. And she jokingly said, I don't think I want to bring these to the attention of a lawyer in Portland, who's town council, I guess, or whatever, because the legal fees exploring the issue that I'm raising would be very expensive. But if you read the documents, which I did, the town does not own the roads. They have the right to use the roads, subject to maintenance and safety. So the issue of parking further complicates the ownership issue. I bring that to your attention. Lori Smith is aware of it, because I gave her all the documents. I'm not sure she wanted to read all the documents that I gave her. And she jokingly said about turning them over to town council and foreman. But there is an issue over ownership of the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have more people on the, out there?
Yes. Next, we have Juliana Ambrose. Juliana, you can speak if you unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm on Dyke Road, and I believe that John said that the spaces on Dyke Road were part of the 173, and I'm curious about that just because there are, you know, the delineated spaces across from the store, but people have been parking way down the road, and those spaces, you know, I don't believe there are any that are actually marked spaces, and so people are kind of on the edge of the marsh, and I'm curious about, you know, erosion and safety because, you know, it's going way, way down and people are, you know, pulled over, like I say, into the marsh. And so I'm curious, you know, are those spaces, my guess is they are not part of the 173, but maybe I misunderstood John's.
Yeah, actually, the 173 extends landward from the little bridge to a sign that says no parking beyond this sign. So shy of that sign, between that sign and the bridge, no, those are indeed part of the parking places. I think there are, I don't know the number, there's 8 to 10 of them there. 11? Okay. Yep, but I appreciate your concern about erosion. It's a real one.
Next, we have Maureen.
Hi, everyone. I wanted a couple comments. One,
I'm sorry, just for the
piggyback on
record, Maureen, could you please state your name and address?
Sure, Maureen Summers, Wildwood Road. I'm piggybacking on Brendan. He is correct. At some point, even the area where he lived on Crescent Avenue, part of that back, I don't know, when Brendan was building or something, they did some quick claims deeds to part of the roads. And so people do actually own them. That part of Crescent that goes from Crescent, Bel Air over to what the Tides is currently using is part of what I remember quick claims deed a number of years ago.
Yeah, called paper roads.
So that may be something that people want to look at. There's a number of streets like that that I recall. Also, piggybacking on what the woman right before me, I think Juliana, was saying with regards to, you know, erosion and whatnot, has there been any thought of maybe numbering the spaces from 1 to 173, which would, you know, clearly delineate where you can park and where you can't? And it also would make it safer in those areas like of Dyke Road, where you actually have an area, you know, that you know you can park in and it's safe to park. And it's safe for people getting in and out of their car. It's safe for people driving. And I think it would also help with, you know, if you shouldn't be parking there because it could be part of erosion and the things that are happening there on Dyke Road with a lot of the water coming up over the road, it might be something to look into. And I also wanted to just throw this out. I don't know, maybe my memory isn't as good, but I thought I remembered when I was younger, that when they started with the parking passes, probably in the 80s maybe, I'm not even sure when that happened, but the sign used to say when you entered Dyke Road and New Bedford Road that you could only park in the spaces, and there was no parking on side streets. So I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, because I know as a kid I didn't really read it. I just remember, I think, hearing it or something. And also just saying that it is very hodgepodge. There are some parts of some streets that say, no wheels on pavement, and then the next street over, there's no sign. On some streets, there were signs, and the signs magically went away in the winter, and never to be seen from again. So those are just things I was throwing out there, but I am wondering if any thought had ever been to numbering the spaces so we know exactly where you can park. It kind of seems maybe that might make this whole problem go away of people guessing where they can or can't park.
Yeah, I agree, Maureen, and that was one of the things, as I said, one of the things we are looking at or maybe suggesting is that in addition to re-looking at where the 173 are located, but also about more clearly delineating perhaps, even if it's by something as simple as a hash mark, because I think the spaces on New Bedford and on parts of Dyke Road, for sure, are not clearly delineated. I mean, to be honest, I did not, other than looking for what poles I'm supposed to look for, I did not know that they went as far up as actually part of the 173. So
There's a sign, but it's small.
Well, I think it's just, there's 12 different kinds of signs. I counted them when I walked around, and the idea is you can either park here or you can't, but there's 12 iterations of how you communicate that. So.
And in theory, if there's nothing saying you can or can't, then under the town's ordinances, it would be you can.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we just need to make it easier.
Yeah, we need to make some consistency.
They're working it, so I just let it go.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Anybody else?
Yes. Peter.
Peter's iPad, you can speak if you unmute yourself.
And tell us who you are, please.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Peter, try and unmute yourself. I cannot unmute you.
We'll have to get back when we can.
Yep.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Anybody else out there?
No one else.
Okay, anybody else in the audience here? Okay.
Any
All right,
thoughts?
well, Kate, it's
It's a start.
interesting.
It's a
Yeah,
start.
Yeah, thank you for your time getting it organized. Okay, we're gonna move on to old business, and the first thing that we have, which has been on the agenda for updates for a while now, is commercial activity on the beach. And I don't know, John, if you wanna kind of start with an update, I know there are some questions.
Yeah, well, we're continuing to work with the tides. I think, from what I understand, what I've heard from people, I think the problems we had with concerns about commercial sales of food outside of the limits of the tide boundary has been handled. I don't know of any continuing concerns on that. The tide understands our position. I think they have been reasonable in terms of enforcing that until I hear otherwise. I'm going to assume that's true. The only issue that I know that is still remaining is the one that affects an expansion of use concerned by the town in terms of the number of chairs that are being used by the tide. So we are continuing our discussion on that and trying to reach an agreement between EOS, the tides management, and the town.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions, either in the room or virtually?
Maureen has her hand up.
Okay.
You all knew I was gonna be the one that was gonna say something, right? So my concern is that with the dune restoration that looks fabulous this year, there was quite a lot put in front of the area of the tides, obviously because it was needed, and hopefully that will also help. The majority of the parking spaces are right in that area, so people would be utilizing that area of the sand, right? In that area, they would park and then walk down to the beach. And because we now have an extended piece now to go your 25 feet and then your 10 feet at high tide, with having, as John had mentioned, the 200 chairs, almost 200 chairs there, and that's not including all the other things that are in the reserve zone. They really are at that area of 10 feet at a high tide just by the storage of the materials that are there between their watercrafts, the 5 or 6 foot lounge chairs, the other chairs that they have, the tables, the umbrellas, the little bar thing that they have out there. It's so much, and it was so pretty when it was just, 22 rooms and there were 20 or 30 chairs out there. It's just over the top. So now with the new dune restoration, what is the town going to do to enforce this moving forward? And I know it's been going on now for a couple of years, and it seems like there isn't an answer, as either you cease and desist or you make the rules clear. If you're not allowed to have a business on the beach, why are they allowed to have a business on the beach? If they're charging people a resort fee, then theoretically, when they're paying this person to be a beach tender, that beach tender is getting paid, and they're running a business, a commercial business, on the public beach, reserve zone or not. So I think that's where the issue is, when you're bussing in hundreds of people, and if we can't have our own watercrafts on the beach because it's taking up places for people to sit, why is it okay for there to be hundreds of people at the tides, 200 people just at the tides? If you just look at the number of beach chairs that are there, it just seems that it's not space for the people who are coming in, the local people who are trying to park and use that beach. They can't even do that because if they do get parking, where do they go to sit? There's no room to sit.
Oh.
And every time those beach tenders step outside of the reserve zone, which, to my point of just the amount that they have stored on, they're already in the reserve zone at high tide. So by putting out 2 or 3 chairs, they're stepping outside of the reserve zone. Every time they take one of their watercrafts and put the watercraft that someone's paying to use into the beach, they're running a business. And now that the beach is smaller and smaller because of the dune restoration, which needed to happen, where does that leave the rest of us this year when we're going to be limited in where we can sit? And then the tides itself is the only one that's in the reserve zone. The tides 2, which is their annex next door, is not part of it. So you can see that they are now moving their area and infringing upon what's not a reserve zone. They're utilizing it as it is a reserve zone. And it seems that there's no consequences, except for the people who live there and the people that live in town that want to use the beach. There's no place for them to sit. You got to walk all the way down because the tides has 200 people, but yet their rooms are only for 22 people or 22 rooms. So I guess it's really, why is this continuing for so long, and what is going to happen this year? Because you have the time now. I know you're working with them and they're being amicable, but there's 22 rooms. I just don't understand why they can put 200 chairs there.
Yeah, I think your numbers are a little bit off, Maureen. There's a lot of beach. We're talking about, I don't understand your point that when people come down Edgewood or Proctor or Broadway, that they have no place to sit. I just don't think that's true. The Tides entrance at the end there is just between those two telephone poles. They have the right to put chairs in the beach premise, which extends beyond the 25 feet down to the water line. The 25 feet is the exclusive use area, and that's where they keep their chairs, as you pointed out, which is totally appropriate. So, you know, it's a matter of degrees, and I think you're perhaps a little extreme on your representation of them.
Well,
So
John,
I'd leave it there.
Yeah,
I have photographs that I've actually sent to you guys documenting the last couple of years, and I've counted the chairs, and there's close to 180 when I counted them. And I have them, it's all documented. I just think it's too many. Like for 200 people when you have 22 rooms, it's over. It's nice and it doesn't bother anybody when there's, 20, 30, 40 people there. It's not infringing, but there's no place to sit. They just are all over. 200.
There's no place to sit, Maureen. It's between the two telephone poles. There's 3 miles of beach to sit. I really don't understand your point on that.
But
I
John,
guess my point is really
Maureen,
where people are parking or coming up,
Yeah.
and they have to move all the way over because they're setting out chairs before people aren't even sitting in them. They've got the whole beach where outside of the reserve zone where people aren't even sitting. I think that's why I'm upset.
John, and I agree that there are a lot of yellow beach chairs set out first thing in the morning, which is somewhat intimidating to other people wanting to perhaps come and sit on what is other, and I tried to sit there.
They go
one
out
time.
only when people bring them out last year.
Well, I have, no, when I I went down there and tried to sit, brought my own beach chair, put it in around the area where there were already empty yellow chairs out, and I was told by a beach boy, staff member, that I couldn't sit there.
When were you told? When was this?
It was probably a year or two ago.
Exactly, and that has changed. That did not happen last year. If
Okay.
it did, you need to tell me. We've been working it.
Okay.
That is no longer happening. The chairs only go out when people request them to go out. They are also bringing them back when people leave the beach.
Okay.
They're keeping 15 feet above the water. You guys are litigating an issue that we've worked hard with the Tides to try to make better. And I believe it is much better last summer, and you will see it better this summer. If you do not, then please let the town know, because we have an agreement with Tides that that's what they're going to do.
Okay, and it would be, well, at such point as you feel it's appropriate to let us know more about it, because it would be helpful, I think. To know that this is the agreement that's been reached with the Tides, so that, we feel comfortable about going down there and sitting there or whatever. Just a thought. And, they're clearly, certainly bringing people over from, guests over from other of their, certainly in the Hidden Pond, it says in their website.
It's absolutely the point that I made right at the beginning, that we are still working with them in terms of the number of chairs and expansion of use piece. That's the piece that is still open on negotiations.
And you're hopeful that that will get resolved before this summer?
Before
right?
this summer? Absolutely not.
Wonderful. Absolutely not.
Of course not before this summer. It's a long, slow process, but we are working it.
Yeah. Can we have the microphone, please?
I shouldn't say not, but probably not. I'm being realistic.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Brendan Donovan again. I would just like to point out, my nephew and his wife came up to visit us, to visit Kennebunkport this past summer in July, and they stayed at the White Barn Inn. and the White Barn Inn provided transportation to the Tides Inn on a timely basis. And they probably took it 4 times. And so people are staying at the White Barn Inn in Kennebunk and visiting the beach at Goose Rocks and being transported over and stayed, being let out in front of the Tides Inn. I had personal experience 3 or 4 times. I can give you the person's name. He's my nephew. And if you wanted to call him, I can give you his phone number. But, you know, that did happen at least 4 or 5 times.
Last summer.
I think a number of the hotels and motels do provide a shuttle bus.
I think they
And
do.
then I
don't
I
know how they
truly
stop
believe
it.
the beach is public, so I don't really
I
think
don't know
there's
how we can
anything
stop it.
wrong with that. But there is, the only prohibition is on high occupancy vehicles, buses. They're those small, I call them 14 passenger.
No, this was larger than that.
Well, anything over 15 passenger is a violation of our ordinance, I believe,
Well,
so.
It happened at least 3 or 4
With the
times.
exception of school groups. School buses
No.
with school groups are still
No,
allowed
large-
to come.
Large van, probably 18, 20 passenger vans.
Well, these, yeah, I mean, the short, people call them the stubby little school buses are 15 passenger vans, so.
These were in yellow, these were white.
No, I'm not talking about
Okay.
yellow.
okay.
Yeah.
And these didn't have school kids in them. They had guests.
I understand
of
that,
other
yep.
Harrington properties.
White Barn's not a Harrington property.
Even more so.
It's part of the resort collection.
No, White Barn is,
I do not believe so,
no,
but
that's so
it's-
bears something or
it's-
other.
Marketing thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well,
But
It's
But
adver-
anyway-
It's advertised as part of the resorts collection, and Mr. Harrington owns the resort collection.
I don't think he does that anymore.
I do believe a number of the, you know, I think,
the reciprocal
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I think the Nonantum can send people over if they want. You know, they don't do it on a regular basis.
Anybody can do
Right,
it if they want.
right, that's what I mean.
It's a public beach.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue really is the chairs and the putting out.
Commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the putting out a real estate
Right.
venue for
Yep.
those guests.
Now,
versus
if the
you got
Tides
people on-
accepted them and gave them a chair and towel and put them down on the beach, that's a problem.
Yeah,
But,
And,
yeah.
So that's what we need to know,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we need to know. And all, you know, and also the, right now, as last summer, there was, in that, what people call, where most of the people sit in that stretch of beach, there's a lot of white sand. There's a lot of dry sand right now. There was a lot of dry sand all last summer until we had some really high tides late.
Yeah.
That's part of
And
it.
that's very helpful when the tide's not coming up so close to the grass.
Yes, it is.
So, right now, there is no dry sand at high tide, the whole length of the seawall at Sand Point, none.
Nothing.
There's no beach there,
Yep,
except right at the river.
yep,
So,
yep.
at high tide, you can't even walk along the wall, it's coming right up to the wall.
God willing, it'll come back a bit.
It's- Anyone who walks the beach regularly knows it changes
Every time.
every tide.
Yeah.
Every
So-
time.
do
Right.
you have someone else that wants to
Mike
speak?
Nash has his hand raised.
Okay.
Mike, you can speak.
Mike, we're waiting for you.
Sorry, I was just slow on the button. This is an opinion, not a fact, but I guess it seems to me that,
I'm
It's
sorry,
reasonable
Mike, could
for-
you please state your name and your address, please, for the record?
oh, apologies, it's Mike Nash and I own 835 Kings Highway. This is an opinion, not a fact, but it seems to me it's reasonable that the Tide would want to put chairs out for their guests. But I guess the notion that they would bring people in from their other properties to use reserved seating on the public beach is where the problem is.
That's
Maybe as a
correct.
compromise, it would be reasonable to say, hey, they can bring people in from other properties, but the capacity is capped at whatever the maximum occupancy of their properties on Kings Highway are.
We're working it.
Okay, it
That's-
just seems absurd that they should be, that because they own one property, they have unlimited access or even access beyond their capacity to the public beach. I get for people that are guests, totally 100%, that's a reasonable part of the offering, but beyond that, it seems frankly absurd.
You and the town are of one mind.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anybody else?
No other hands raised.
Okay, so thank you for your
Sure. Short
help on that one.
discussion.
Yeah. The next item on the agenda is the trash transition, which I think
We go again.
Back to
you're
you,
more in the
John.
know
It's
than the
me
rest of us,
again.
but if you can give us an update, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that's hopefully a little clearer, but we are moving to the automated collection. Barrels will be distributed during the last 2 weeks of April. So that's the new, and that's pretty well in stone now. So we'll be following the routes of the trash routes. Now, remember, your route is going to change. Because we are using the automated, it's a single truck, so to be able to cover everything, they have to pick up over a 5-day period instead of the current 4-day period. So your day will possibly change. You will be given 2 64-gallon barrels during that 2 weeks of April. Starting the first week of May, you'll be using those barrels. We'd ask, please, don't use them during that last week of April. If you get them the third week of April, especially if you put a lot in them, because they'd be very heavy and it's going to be difficult for the backloaders to get them up. So that's going to be a little bit of an interesting time in that second week. But hopefully you wouldn't have accumulated that much trash anyway in 1 week. But
Oh, you'd be surprised.
yeah, right on. And people so that's going to be an interesting time. But starting the first week of May, we'll all have a 64-gallon recycling and a 64-gallon trash. And those, their carts, their wheels, they move easily. We're asking that you use them for 1 or 2 months. We'll figure out how that'll work. And if you then find that you would like a smaller or a larger bin, there will be an option for a 32-gallon, I think it's 34, but it's the smaller size, that you can swap out your 64, or you can go to the 96, which is the larger size, and swap out your 64. And you can do that for either trash or recycling. So that's kind of where we are. You think of a 64, it's like your normal 32s are what we would consider, the round trash containers. The 64s are the ones you'll see on the road that are the square, tall ones with the flip lid. Those are the 64s. And that's kind of it. Picking up both each week. So trash will be every week and recycling will be every week. So hopefully that will cut down on how much you need to move these barrels.
All year long?
All year long, yeah. And Goose Rocks will be Fridays and Fridays only all year long.
Did I hear you right, starting in May?
May, 1st of May,
First
first
of
week
So-
of May.
John, we'll get the new barrels sometime in the last 2 weeks of April.
Correct.
But we don't really, they'll still be picking up our old whatever equipment.
That's
That-
correct,
until the
until
end
the
of
first
April,
week
until
of
the
May.
first week of
That's
May.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
use your old barrels and then bring them. We'll have a barrel dump days or 2 or weekends at the garage. I think it's gonna take a lot more than 2 weekends. Think of the volume. It just blows me away how that's gonna work, but
You have to take the new 64s, whatever, out to the street?
yeah, you've gotta bring them out to the street, just like you would today. I mean, it's no
Yeah.
different than how you're doing it today. It's just, I know folks on smaller, private roads, where Casella can't get down in, they still won't be able to get down in. And where folks would bring, 5 or 6 barrels up to the head of the road, it's gonna be problematic for them, and we recognize that. We're gonna try to work as with you as much as we can. One thought is that folks may want to build shelters at the end of their road, and codes will work with you to try to get permits in place to allow you to do that, because they are considered, if they're more than 10 square feet, they're considered a structure. So we need to see how we can work that out, but it's gonna be a learning curve. The good news is a lot of towns have gone through this, and it's painful in the beginning, but we'll get through it, God willing.
John, looking ahead to the summer and the education program we put in place last summer, I guess I can use our trash barrel because we've got one of the square ones on wheels. It's probably the same kind of thing we will be getting replaced. I'm just trying to think it's time to already go ahead and start. We'll try to do the same thing we did last summer with those very eye-catching, thank you, Fred, stickers that we put on to try and get across to people.
Let's redo them, let's make some more, right?
We've got to get them, yeah.
They'll
we've
be
gotta
on
get
the upper
started on
lid,
that.
and then we can put them on the
sides,
side, too.
yeah.
Those will be 96s,
Oh, good.
they'll be the big, yeah.
Oh, the beach ones will be the bigger ones,
Yeah,
the
the
96,
beach will be
okay.
96,
Okay.
yeah.
And I have a funny question that isn't relating to the trash transition, but we left some of the current trash barrels in place. I know one of the places it was left in place was Proctor, or Edgewood, Edgewood. But then it wasn't being picked up. I think they changed that now. They must have emptied, because there were basically dog poop bags. That's what most
Right.
people use it for in
Right.
the winter, because the dog walkers. So I think that they got with either maybe somebody
It was
from
a bump if they
DPW.
weren't.
Somebody from BPW, yeah, because I was told they weren't picking up between January 1st and, I think it was May 1st or April 1st. But, so we've got the DPW, or somebody is down there, maybe not Casella, but somebody is down there picking those up. It looks better, because
Good.
there was space in the one that where I came
Good.
off the beach. Thank you. Let's keep that in mind for next winter.
I
We
think
still
they're
need-
only at the open right of way.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
yes.
no.
Yeah,
There's
I
nothing
think-
at the ones
That's
they've
Proctor,
closed
right, yeah.
off.
No, there's one I guess it must be Proctor then.
Proctor,
Yeah,
yeah.
not Edgewood.
It's the one that
No,
has the ramp,
yeah.
she only opened one.
And Dyke and
Right.
I don't usually use Jeffrey's
Jeffries,
Way, but
yeah.
it is at Dyke Road and Proctor, and they were
Bartlett's
full to
open too.
overflowing, and people were just, or what was worse,
Has steps.
where
but it's
there
open.
were no trash barrels,
Yeah.
they'd
Little
taken
pile.
away, yeah.
Any other comments on trash? Fred,
Uh,
want to come up and identify yourself, and then we'd love to hear what you have to
Sign
say.
my label.
Yeah.
Fred Stafford, Kings Highway. I'm curious, where most of the homes aren't occupied in April or May, what are they gonna do with the barrels?
Yeah, hopefully
just gonna leave
we'll,
them there, or-
well, they'll be left there, we'll notify people, and hopefully they'll reach out to their neighbors and have them just pull them up to the house. That's all we can do, is leave them there at the curb.
Okay,
Yeah.
just curious. Is there any plans to let the realtors that might
Yes,
handle those?
yes,
No?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, yep.
Thanks, Fred. Anybody else out there that has any?
No hands raised.
Okay, done with trash, thank you.
Trash talk.
Yeah, the next part of the agenda is just new business, one of which is typically we've supported the beach profiling from the Southern Maine Beach Profile Program to the tune of $1,000. And as Bill mentioned, there is some question about the federal support, but I think in talking to Lori Smith, she suggested we go ahead with this, and she will move accordingly depending on what happens with the broader funding initiative. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this funding request for this year.
So moved.
$1,000.
Second?
Second, okay, all those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
great, thank you. And then I think we already covered, Chaz did a good job on the beach parking sticker. I don't think there's any more to add on that, is there from your
Yeah.
standpoint?
No, I think that, and thank you, Chaz, for that. Yeah, those are the new fees and the new fines. The 265, it was quite a bit lower for the fire lane, but that's been a real issue.
Yeah.
That people have been parking, particularly down at the west end, within the fire lanes, coming right up to the corners. So, and part of the signage campaign that's being done, and there is, as I think you know, the chief is meeting with his folks and planning to get consistency in the signs and to get clarity in terms of the fine amounts, so that people are aware that when they're parking there, they're risking a $265 fine. And I think hopefully that will get people's attention. It is a little more signage on the beach, we apologize for that, but I think we'd all agree that it's helpful and
It's
useful.
necessary, yeah,
Yep.
okay, perfect.
Good idea.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn at this point. I think we covered a lot of topics, a lot of ideas were brought up, and our next meeting is May 19th, but I entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much for your time
Thank you,
in
folks.
person and online.